talking about. We're talking about is genocide ever justified?
Wow. Is that what you brought the guns for?
What about mosquitoes?
Mosquitoes?
Yeah, what about mosquitoes?
They were eating me alive earlier.
Yeah.
You didn't help me.
I
Why
didn't
didn't you use your guns?
Have you ever seen those salt guns that they use they shoot little pieces of salt and you can like shoot flies with it?
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Shooting salt?
Yeah, it's like you load it up with like pellets of salt and it's like a little.
Wow. Okay. And then you could also shoot it like at your mashed potatoes later.
You probably could.
When you're done, when the barbecue's done.
When the barbecue's done. It's true. But yeah, mosquitoes gotta go, I think.
They definitely have to go. They're towards the top of the list.
I would put them number one.
Really?
Yeah, number one. Yeah. Okay. I mean, like the malaria they're like giving like third world children. Yeah, I'm like not down with it. They gotta go.
That is a good point.
They gotta go.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And we're back. Hey, it's Griffin. And I'm here with my very good friend, Joshua Yehl, senior editor and producer at IGN. And we're just going to have a fun little conversation today. Joshua, thank you for being here.
Oh, wait, you told me there was going to be no fun. I thought this was going to be very serious, like, Barbara Walters.
So tell me what it's like being a child. I've seen here that you spent a lot of your early days as a small person.
I certainly
what was that like for you?
What were you thinking there?
Yeah, what was your thought process doing that?
Yeah.
So what is IGN? So here's the thing. I think everybody out here in almost the world, anyone who's ever watched anything on the internet probably has some vague idea of what IGN is. They've either seen some kind of video content or they've read an article. But like, I don't think I barely even know as much as I engage with media about media. I couldn't tell you where IGN starts and where it ends. So I actually do think it would be kind of an interesting question to hear from you. What is IGN in its totality? What is IGN?
Sure. Well, it started as just a video game website, and the letters stood for Imagine Games Network. Mm-hmm. And it no longer means that, by the way. It's like IBM. It no longer means what it means. It's just the letters.
Okay. In my head, I thought it meant like it was like internet gaming news.
Sure.
I was like trying to fill in what I thought.
We've heard everything.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I actually for a while just said it stood for I'm gay now, which I would say during our Pride streams.
Good, excellent.
But yeah, and it's since gone on to include not just games, but entertainment, like movies, and TV, or really anything that nerds like. There's one time a music section, but it's no longer there. Yeah, so where I come in is that I am, as you said, a senior editor and producer of features, and my specialty is entertainment features. I started work at the site as the comic book section editor, but comic books have gone on to take over all of pop culture. So now I'm just a general section editor, and I talk about movies, TV, comic books, video games, whatever. It doesn't matter. I covered a superhero musical last month. Everything's fair game. So IGN has become so big, and it's like a global, worldwide brand now, and it covers so much that essentially I view it as like this giant like network of different people with different specialties and stuff. And a lot of people tend to be very critical of IGN, calling it like a hive mind or something, but it's impossible for us to be a hive mind because there's just so many people. So it is a place where you don't get just one point of view, but many point of views under a general network about all things nerdy.
Yeah, so is IGN kind of decentralized then, actually, where there's like lots of different things going on, or do you feel like IGN is like fairly organized and cohesive?
Oh, we're definitely a mess.
Okay. All right.
No. But yeah, there are different teams and different offices working from different places. But we're always trying like be all on the same page and stuff. We are like what I'm doing at my desk is going to be vastly different from what the next person over is doing.
How
at their
long have
desk.
you been with IGN?
This is year 9 for me being a full-time employee, and then I did 2 years of freelance before that.
Okay. And before that, you were an independent journalist.
Yeah, well, I started post-college. I started out writing instruction manuals for a living.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And that is
about that in the past.
Yeah, that is
up in our conversation
the most boring possible thing to possibly do with your life. And
I've actually had creative writers though tell me that reading them is like the perfect palate cleanser for a creative writer. Like if you're someone who's constantly trying to write in the voices of different people, reading an instruction manual it's like the smelling coffee at the, you know what I mean? It's the smelling coffee of
Yeah.
of creative writing.
I could see that because finally everything's in order and is how it should be, and there's no room for creativity.
There's no
it's
tone.
just
Yeah.
it's going back to
It's a
the
toneless.
basic building blocks.
Right.
Yeah, I could see that for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, then I would always.
How does someone evolve from being someone who writes instruction manuals into doing what you do though? That's crazy.
Well, I always did have like I really loved creative writing and stuff in my early days, and did like
Yeah, I have to imagine you probably did creative writing before.
Yeah, but then a teacher told me, a professor in college told me, you can't really make money doing that unless you're like Stephen King, or something like that. Like 1% of writers actually can make a career creatively writing, and that I should probably just give up and no, I shouldn't say give up, but she said you probably go to something more secure, which is instruction manual writing. And it was good money, but like I said, it was super boring. So then I just started freelancing, writing about comic books and doing comic book reviews in my free time. And then eventually I had done that enough until I could, escape and join IGN.
Is depression like something you have to get employed as a college professor? I used to have a college professor. He was actually this is great, at Wayne State University in Detroit, by the way. He was like a genius in ancient Greek, and so he was like known as one of like the preeminent like living translators of Aristotle. And he used to take pride in like mentally breaking like people who would like come to his door, like door-to-door salesmen and people like that. This was like something he would like brag to us as a class.
Oh my God.
He would like tell us that he could like make the cable man like cry.
Oh my gosh.
Just, like totally unhinged.
Wow.
And the best part about that class was that he basically scared half of the class into dropping, and then he failed half of what was left.
Oh no. Wow. Brutal.
I thought like in my like post-pubescent brain that like if I stick in this class, like he'll respect me. No.
You just put yourself through a lot of abuse.
Yeah, totally. And he just failed me. So anyways, yeah.
You were in the failing half?
I was.
Okay.
It was really hard.
That's why you're sitting here talking to me
exactly.
now.
Exactly. Not working at IGN. Anyways, please continue with your story.
No, I think that was you asked how I got there. Yeah,
that's right.
that was pretty much it.
Well,
really.
what do you feel like the major like daily responsibilities of people who work at IGN is? Like, what are your coworkers like doing? What do they do? Are they just writing? Is it all writing? Is it organizational? Is it like?
Well, there's the editorial team, which I'm a part of, and a lot of our responsibility is we have like a news team who's covering all the breaking news, and again we cover movies, TV, gaming, and like other like niche hobbies and stuff. So there's a lot to cover. Our news team is very busy and hardworking. We have international offices. We have a team in Australia and in the UK. So like they cover when we're asleep, they're covering the news in the middle of the night. So it's a 24/7 news cycle, really.
Have you seen the company change like dramatically like since you've been a part of the team?
Yes, it's funny you mentioned that, because when I started, I was on, like I said, on the entertainment section of the site, and we were just in a small satellite office here in Los Angeles, and the big cool headquarters where they covered all the video games was in San Francisco. But as the entertainment industry grew in size and it became more about our beat, like the nerd beat, like nerdum has become pop culture, right? You're no longer nerdy. That's just the way it is. The general audiences are nerdy audiences now. And so the LA office has grown, and they hired some executives who really, were entertainment focused, and they moved like the hub of power from San Francisco down into Los Angeles. We actually just closed our San Francisco office, and the LA office is this big, huge studio with like multiple studios in this giant office. And we won.
Yeah,
we won.
So. Wait a minute. So are most people in the office? Or are they in the office sometimes? Like I know that like COVID kind of changed what work life was for most people, but is there still that feeling, that vibe of being at IGN, or is that like IGN's like an idea rather than a place? You know what
It's
I mean?
in your heart.
Yeah.
Well, IGN's
everywhere you go.
Yeah. I would say that, I guess it depends on your job. My job, I'm very fortunate that I can do my job at home. So I usually work a hybrid, at home in the office. But generally, if you're on the video team, which is like the other big half of IGN, you have to be in office because we have to be there to shoot things. And we have like podcasts and shows, and celebrities come in to do like interviews, and game designers, and we do like demos and stuff. So all that has to take place in the office most of the time, unless we go to them sometimes with like a camera crew. But yeah, most of it is there isn't a culture at IGN in the office, but it's not the way it used to be. I don't think any office is probably 100% the same.
Probably not. Do you miss that at all?
I do. Yeah.
That feeling of being like in the center of the universe.
Yeah. We had a cool vibe of like, working at like a entertainment news, site, and just like breaking news would come and it would be like red alert and all hands on deck, and we'd fire up the cameras and talk about the latest Marvel or DC news or something. I do kind of miss that.
Right. I'm like imagining like the lights that like spin when you score a goal in hockey.
Exactly.
It's really funny. So I grew up, my dad's like a television journalist, and one of my favorite things to do when I was a little kid was just going to the office with him. And there was nothing really for me to do, but just like feeling the excitement of like everything going on and feeling like people were really busy, the kind of like metropolitan kind of feeling of energy coming off of everyone.
Yeah.
It's really, really exciting. Do you feel like it still has that at all?
I'd say yeah. As time has gone on, more people have returned to the office, and there's fun things always happening. Before Armored Core 6 came out, there was just the devs were there, and I like peeked into a studio, and they were just like playing it and talking about it, and I thought that's so cool.
Yeah,
that is awesome.
really cool.
Just any given day, you never know what's going to be in the office. But yeah, it is a really fun place to be.
That is fun. And I know that IGN has been like particularly criticized by mostly like niche like corners of the internet. When it comes to like, issues like journalistic integrity and stuff like that. But I do wonder, like, maybe disregarding a lot of like the loaded elements that kind of come with those arguments, which is like, a lot of those arguments are coming from like people who are like obviously expressing like maybe sexist views and things like that. Do you think there is like something to be thought about instead when it comes to journalistic integrity, when it comes to talking about media, entertainment, and things like that?
Yeah, I think it's really important because the line between like enthusiast and like actual journalists has never been more blurred. In fact, I even saw that, for example, for the Barbie movie, journalists, like critics, like movie critics, could not get into a screening where the studio normally invites them to like an early screening to watch the movie so they can have the review ready, for the embargo lift, because so many influencers were being invited instead. These theaters were full of influencers because the studios know that if they reach out to fans or people who have YouTube channels completely devoted to their brand, they're going to say nothing but nice things, right, about it. And so why would you let the critic in to possibly like rip your movie to shreds? Potentially. I don't know.
No,
I also don't want to like say I'm like specifically blaming the studio and saying that was their strategy, but it certainly felt like that.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. And I do also think that, sometimes like we're finding like huge chasms, especially in the nerd culture, between like what the critical opinion of something is and what like the fan opinion is of something. Because the critical response, especially within like the film community to like something like The Last Jedi was like wildly positive. And then like the fan backlash was like insanely negative. So these two audiences had wildly different opinions about this same piece of media.
It's funny that you mentioned that. Also, as part of my job, I'm a film critic for IGN, and I reviewed The Last Jedi.
Yeah. And
I gave it a glowing review. And to this day, I still get people who slide into my DMs to be like, "Do you regret giving it such a high score?" And like, well, no, I still like really love that movie.
Yeah.
I think in time, like anything, you're able to see more of its flaws and stuff, but like still it's a thumbs up for me.
Yeah. I mean, I have way more problems with the way they tried to rectify the fan outcry and fan outrage about that movie than I do with the actual movie itself. I mean, we could go way down the rabbit hole on that.
Yeah,
one.
episode 9. Yeah.
Exactly.
Or actually, it's a shame they never made an episode 9.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, we just never found
out. We'll never know.
Yeah.
We'll never know if Palpatine really did return after all. But yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. Do you feel like journalistic integrity is particularly fraught in your particular corner of journalism? I guess you kind of do feel that way.
Well, yes and no. I like to think that we do a good job of like making sure we're like buttoned up in that area. And maybe a lot of people don't know this, but for example, if we are given some sort of like perk or something that's, free or whatever, and able to like create an opportunity for us to cover something, like they fly us out to watch a movie at a film festival or something, we disclose like anything, like any sort of things that are paid for by the studios, just to know we're on the up and up. And if somebody for some reason, like if internally we're discussing it and we're like, oh, that person's opinion is clearly compromised because of XYZ reason, maybe they have a relationship with someone at the studio or someone who made the movie or game or whatever, we say they're just not going to do it. That's actually one of the luxuries of having such a huge team, is that if someone's not available to do something for whatever reason, we can just turn to somebody else. So it is very important to us that we do have integrity, and that wherever possible, we make sure that, we're buttoned up there. And also just in terms of ads, I've had some people remark to me of like, oh, you wrote a positive piece about this, comic book or whatever, it had an ad from that company, you were paid off. And I say, here's the thing, at IGN, they actually do a great job of separating like church and state, like editorial and sales. I have no idea what ads are going up on the site at any given time. And I find out when everybody else does. One time I was doing a video that was sponsored by the Pokemon company, and I was brought on not as like a spokesperson or a host, but just as the TCG like expert to play the game. And they wanted me to say sponsored by the Pokemon company. And even that, I said, I'm not going to say that. We can have one of our hosts whose job it is to like read sponsored language do that. But like, I want to keep myself as distanced from that as possible to maintain my editorial integrity, because really that's all I have.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, it seems like maybe people today are maybe more confused about how journalism actually works than maybe ever before, because I've also noticed that just in general the conversation, especially in American culture, has become way more polarized, like just about journalism, about editorial, and not being able to tell where it starts and where it finishes. And I think that like PR and different organizations like that have gotten so sophisticated and they've gotten so good that they're now pumping out. One time I was looking at this young artist's work online. I couldn't believe that this person was like basically a 17-year-old was like getting like all these incredible articles written about them, and because she basically was representing herself as kind of like a homegrown artist. And just like through like digging a little bit further, I realized she has like a whole PR team. She's a 17-year-old with a PR team, and like these articles are really pieces of like PR that are being spun. And like it seems like a lot of large like news outlets are creating editorial, or kind of like PR sections of their websites that look very similar or kind of different from what they're doing, and it's like becomes incredibly confusing. People can't tell the difference between an ad or an article anymore, and that's like I was just wondering if that's something that you think about when you see those things online. You're like, wow, that's confusing. And
it is confusing. Even there was a time on IGN for a short time where we did like sponsored articles, and we editorially we said, well, these look too similar to actual articles, so like the entire design, graphic, and language needs to change. It needs to be so obvious that there's no doubt that it's an ad. And so now when you scroll down the site, those stick out as if something's an ad or if it's original piece of reporting.
Right, of course. Well, I wanted to segue a little bit into a different topic. I've grilled you enough on journalistic integrity, but I think
you're like Josh has none. Let's move on.
Well, mostly what I really want to talk about, and I think is a really interesting idea, is like adult friendships. You and I met each other when we were like basically about like 30 years old.
Yeah.
And it's been quite a few years now. I think we were not quite. I think we were maybe like we were in our late 20s when we met. Yeah. And we met in a very interesting, fun, cool way. And I think it's just really interesting. I think how you make friends as an adult is really interesting. And tell people how we met. Yeah,
I remember the day I met you. It was the worst day of my life. How could I ever forget? No, I think you like beat me in a game of Pokemon at our favorite local shop over here, Next Gen. And my life was never the same.
But isn't that interesting? Like for me, I've never talked about this on camera much, but I've been sober for about 10 years now. And I have a life before that, and I have a life after that. And so many different interesting things have been important parts of both of those, and some of them have been important parts of the later. So for me, when I got sober, I had to like kind of figure out like what my interests were, my hobbies were. Like I was a DJ and I worked in nightlife and I did all those kinds of things. But as I stopped drinking, first of all, I realized I had all this extra money.
Drinking is expensive.
Drinking's really expensive. But I like started playing video games again. I started like every once in a while I would stay in on a weekend night, And all of a sudden you start like looking for other ways to fill that time, and card games like became like were something that I loved in my childhood so much. Like playing Magic. I remember I was super into Magic, the Urza's block in like the mid to late 90s, and it was like Grim Monolith and Voltaic Key and like Elvish Piper. That stuff just got me like so hyped. But it was something that I found that I could return to when I was living my lifestyle completely differently than I had been before. And I made all these like new friends that way too. And so meeting people like you was like honestly amazing.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for saying that.
Mm-hmm.
After I said that you ruined my life. No, you've done nothing but make my life better. Also, I didn't know that about you. You said you don't really talk about it. You never mentioned that to me. 10 years sober. Wow, I'm really proud of you. Good for you, man.
Last February.
Wow,
last February,
that is awesome.
Yeah.
You had a whole other life that I didn't know about.
Well, it's different,
Is that where you got the habit of wearing these the sleeveless shirts and the hat? Some things. Some party boy things carried over.
Maybe a little bit. But I will say though that this is a shirt for Castlevania. So that I would say that's more of a.
Oh, okay.
It's a Japanese Castlevania shirt. So way more nerdy than Party Boy. And the hat, when I was in Detroit, there was no purpose in wearing a Tigers hat because everybody fucking knows you're rooting for the Tigers. But now that I live in LA, maybe not everybody knows I'm rooting for the Tigers.
You got to represent.
Yeah, I got to represent. But yeah, have you? And here's the thing. I know that this is true for you too because I've watched you do it. But like, how do you feel about making adult friendships and like how hobbies like card games like interact with those?
When I was younger, I played Yu-Gi-Oh. That was probably the big one for me in my teen years. And yeah, I made a whole little group of friends in high school just playing that game. And when I put down the cards, that all that went away. And I found it was a little more difficult to make friends. I always had trouble making friends. I was 100% absolute total loser just from the word go, from like my first day in elementary school to now. And but when you do get into a hobby like playing a card game, you meet people who are just like you, right? And I love that. Yeah, and meeting you has been super awesome. Also, you're like one of the more, how do I put this? You're like one of the more like put together and mature people in our card group. I can't believe I'm saying that about you.
I know about me of all people.
That I'm admitting to that. But I feel like, I don't know, I've had people describe me as like too mature for my age or like an old soul or something. And I feel like
I can't imagine you that way. Here's the thing. I've only known you as an adult man. So
yeah.
But I can imagine you as a young man being exactly like you are now.
I just a little, I don't know, a little more eccentric or weird than everybody else. But I feel like I gravitated towards you because like, oh yeah, you kind of like, you know what you're doing. And also generally you try to like, like in prison, you want to like go beat up the biggest guy. And I was like, oh, this guy's really good at the game at Pokemon cards. So I need to beat him.
But you beat everybody. I mean, like you've gone to Worlds, you have incredible results in Pokemon actually. Do you have one that you're actually the most proud of?
Well, qualifying to play in the World Championships was a huge goal, and I am super proud of that.
Yeah,
and I'll tell anyone if they'll stand to listen. Even if not, I'll chase people down the street. It's like, hey, did you know?
Hey, did you hear?
Did you hear the word?
Been invited to Worlds.
That was huge. But I would say my top regionals performance, which was like 10th place, like top 16 at just a random expanded regionals, was my top most favorite performance because it was the first time I like broke through like the day 2 curse and actually did like decently well. I didn't even make top cut. Like that's where you really celebrate. And then when you win, you're like, oh yeah, that's awesome. But I didn't get to that point. Right after that tournament, COVID happened, completely stalling my progress. And then when Worlds happened, it was 2 years later. And I
feel rusty as hell?
I was so rusty. I hadn't really been keeping up with the game that much. And so, yeah, when I played, I was almost like, I'm just here to play for fun. I don't have a realistic shot at winning because I haven't like studied the matchups and stuff. But yeah, back in the day when I was, in 2019, yeah, I had really just watched myself get just like a little bit better at the game every time I entered a major tournament, like a regional, because you make like top 128, which is like still like day one. And then you make in the top 128, get a little higher. You make your first day two, but then you bomb out of that because you've never been in day two before.
Yeah.
Then you do a little bit better in day two, a little bit better after that. And then finally you make like top 16. I was like, woohoo. I got money for the first time.
That's crazy.
Booster boxes.
So what was your result in that? Do you remember where it was and what your result was?
You mean like my win-loss record?
No, well, maybe, but I was thinking your place. What was your place?
It was 10th place.
10th place is so
yeah.
good. 10th
and
place
I think
is
they
so
gave me,
good.
Yeah.
10th place is so good.
They gave me $500 and sent it to me on a little Pokemon debit card, which I thought was the coolest thing in the world.
Do you still have it?
I do, yeah.
I
it's
would
in
have
a drawer.
hard time getting rid of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. But no, yeah. What was your biggest result while we're talking about this?
I don't think I have a good result. I've won like a lot of win-a-boxes and stuff like that. Those are... I'm such a locals warrior. You know what I mean?
You really are.
Yeah,
you really know how to metagame the next gen scene. Yeah, the SoCal scene.
Yeah. And the other thing too is that I don't have. So I've always felt this way. I think the most impressive thing about getting invited to Worlds is the persistence that it requires. Like hunting cups challenges. Regionals are really, really hard, and I could see myself someday doing very well at a regional.
Absolutely,
because I could definitely put in like the time and effort for like the 2 weeks leading up to it. But the year of persistently like dedicating at least one day of your weekend, a week pretty much, to like hunting cups and challenges is a lot of patience and persistence.
Yeah. It felt like a second full-time job that I signed myself up for. It was fun, but yeah, to your point, it did eventually get a little grueling, and I felt like obligated to go to cups. I would go visit my family, on the East Coast, and I'd be like, well, let me see where there's a league challenge that I could escape to for an afternoon just to try and get some points while I was there. Right? But I think I maybe went a little too hard because, well, a lot of the advice I got was go as hard as you can in the first half of the season so you can hopefully you have to get 500 points, championship points.
I think it's 600 now.
Yes, it is. So when I was doing it, 500 championship points. But they said go try and get as many as you can in the first half of the season so that at the halfway point you're hopefully over the midway point, and then you can chill out and just casually kind of plan the next couple events you need to clean up the invite, because you don't want to get to the halfway point and still need a majority of your points.
Of course.
That'd be a horrible position. But I went so hard that I had qualified within like 6 months of the year. So I maybe went a little too hard. Well, but it actually ended up helping.
Did you experience any burnout? Because that's my big problem is that this is just for folks at home, I play Pokemon, I play Yu-Gi-Oh, I play Magic. The reason I play all three is because I'm constantly burning out on one of them or two of them.
Yeah. It's easy for like the metagame to get really stale for any one of those games.
Yeah. Pokemon in particular, I think enters like a metagame that I think is really fun. Right now it feels like maybe like once every 2 years it gets really, really exciting and interesting. Where there's like a bunch of decks that are all kind of really good.
Yeah.
Usually there's like a pretty small pool of top decks, and that's just not as fun for me.
Yeah. No, I feel what you're saying. Yeah, there's burnout. I think I was enjoying, like I was saying, just doing like a little better every time I played, and I could feel myself getting just like better at the game. Yeah. And I think that was sort of driving my success of like there's still excitement to like keep doing well. But I do admit after I played in Worlds, I was totally burnt out, and I've just been kind of on a competitive hiatus since then for the past year. I still play just every now and then for fun, but I don't think I could ever do the Worlds grind again.
Do you have a favorite meta? Do you remember ever like a meta you really liked?
I think it was that first like summer that I decided I wanted to get into the competitive scene and like actually go for a Worlds invite.
What year
and it was the summer of 2019, and Worlds had just happened, I think, or maybe it was just about to happen, but the competitive season had started at the end of the summer, and I played the Zap Beast deck, which had like Zapdos and
it was the retreat Zapdos, right?
Yes, you play like Guzma. Who's the big muscly mosquito? Buzzwole. And cards like that. That was probably my most favorite because it was really fun to have to like piece together the win, and depending on your prize count, you had to like use certain Pokemon to to take advantage of their power spikes and stuff. I think that was the most fun because that's when I got like top 8 at a cup, second place at a cup, top 4 at a cup. It's like back to back to back, and I was like, oh, I have a ton of points right off the bat with this deck that I really like. Maybe I can do this. So that got me a lot of confidence. That was my favorite. Yeah.
My favorite, I have two favorites, but I think my favorite is is late XY, early Sun and Moon.
Mm.
I really liked that one. Had like so you could still play the older decks. They had been power crept, but not out of like existing at all. And like it was a lot of really good. It was fun. There was like there were competitive Stage 2 decks. It was a very there were like pretty decent like basic decks that revolved around basics like Darkrai and Volcanion were like still playable, and I really like basically like through Burning Shadows, Guardians Rising, I really liked those formats just because they had like variety, and it was really fun to sit down and have every person you played against in a tournament playing a different deck.
Yeah,
that was really fun.
That's actually what's happening right now because we're also in between formats, right? A little bit of Sword and Shield and a little bit of Scarlet and Violet, right? And you said you're also enjoying right now, right?
No, I'm not so big on right now. Right now it's not horrible. The decks I like the most are not that great. They're okay. I like water decks, and Champow's okay.
Right.
Champow's okay.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's like a tier 2, kind of tier 3-ish, tier 2.5 kind of deck, which is decent, but not amazing. But the deck the format that I liked recently was the one Evolving Skies, the Evolving Skies format.
Okay.
Suicune Ludicolo kind of came out of nowhere, and I was playing that deck a lot, and I really liked that. That was really fun. But yeah. So when did you play Yu-Gi-Oh?
I played when the game first came out. First came out. I think I was like 14 or something. When was this?
Yeah,
2004.
Like
yeah. And I just had like the starter deck and went to the mall for a little tournament, and that's Josh's first card game tournament, and the rest was history from there.
It's really funny because I actually think that like what card game you're interested in a lot of times for a lot of people is really based on nostalgia. You know, it's like it's reflective of like how old you were when blank. And I'm gotta be like the weirdest Yu-Gi-Oh fan ever because I learned how to play Yu-Gi-Oh as like a 30-year-old man.
You've been 30 for a long time.
I know, I've been 30 for so long.
So you didn't play back in the day?
I never played.
I did.
I never played.
Okay, you picked it up as an adult.
I literally I have a friend in Michigan who had a cube and taught me how to play with their cube like a couple months before I moved to LA in like 2017, something like that. And yeah, I like people had for years been like, no, you'll really like this, and I was like, yeah, and because it came out like in 2004. I'm a freshman in high school in 2004. I think you probably were too, to be honest. But somehow I missed it. I didn't have a local card shop. I didn't have like people who were interested in it. Completely missed it.
Yeah, I think I was maybe in middle school or first year of high school, but it was a loser thing to do. And so I would like hide the fact that I did. And I remember one time my friends showed up at the mall and saw me playing, and I was so embarrassed. They were so nice and cool about it, and we're like, oh, awesome, like fun. They didn't think anything of it, but I was so embarrassed.
That's really funny.
Imagine having to come out twice as a gay man and as a Yu-Gi-Oh player.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. Yeah. Oh my God. And that's like maybe part of why I dropped out of card games when I did, because I was really, really interested in Pokemon and Magic. I actually learned how to play Magic first, and then I think I knew that Pokemon was coming out. I think I learned how to play Pokemon with the very first product that taught you how to play Pokemon. Actually, I learned how to play Magic from Portal, which was a product like meant to teach you how to play Magic. And I learned how to play Pokemon from like the beginner starter set that came with like with Machamp. And like all of the Machamps had the first edition stamp on it. But yeah, I learned how to play both those games like with the products that were like meant to teach you how to play it. But yeah, I definitely feel like as I got older, I didn't run into more people I could share it with. I ran into less people that I could share it with. And then it wasn't until I was like looking for another way to connect with people that I like came back to it like in my 20s.
Yeah. I'd never played Pokemon when I was a kid. I just collected the cards. Go to Toys R Us like once a weekend and trade cards and stuff with the other kids. And then in my adult life, I remember I had moved to LA and I fell in with this group of friends who always played Magic the Gathering. Like even if we were all hanging out to do something else, like play a board game or watch a movie, it was understood that they'd all come with their Magic deck and they would play Magic for like an hour or two. And
always
I was
got that thing on me.
I was
whips
like,
out a pack of cards.
On their dual disc.
Yeah, exactly.
Their Magic dual disc. I don't know.
Yeah, whatever wizardry they have.
Yeah. I guess they don't need a dual disc because they're wizards, huh?
That's true. They make the cards float.
That's why I don't have a cool show.
That's true.
It's too easy. Anyways,
don't challenge Hasbro. There'll be a cool show.
They actually announced a show like years ago by the Russo brothers, the Marvel directors, but it's yet to come out. But yeah,
those guys have the craziest like history of work of like anyone ever. Community and Arrested Development, weirdest.
Right.
Like all good though. So
yeah, absolutely. But then me and my friend were like, we don't want to play Magic. Let's go buy Pokemon starter decks. And that's how we got into it as an adult, as a 20-something adult, like 26, 27. And then, from there, all the old Yu-Gi-Oh feelings when I used to play competitive Yu-Gi-Oh started coming back. And the rest is history.
And so like do you have a lot of nostalgia for the old formats of Yu-Gi-Oh, like GOAT? Do you feel?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you feel like you're transported back?
Absolutely. Yeah. Going back and looking at those cards and like handling those again. And the good thing the GOAT format exists, so I can go back and play the same format from when I was a teen. Yeah,
GOAT is amazing. I really, really love GOAT. And I've been getting into Edison recently, so I've been really enjoying that. But what cards do you remember, like what you played with back in the day?
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember when the first couple tournaments, you had to, the big deck was just the beat down, right? And you had to get your beat sticks, your La Jinn, the Magical Genie of the Lamp, Harpy's Brother, anything that costs 1,800 for 4 stars. And then Goblin Attack Force, Goblin Strike Force, something. The 4-star 2,300 attack that puts itself in defense mode but has 0 defense. That came out and like changed everything. 2,300. And then they released the first like 1,900, the Gemini Elf, which was a secret rare at the time. There was a Mechanical Chaser, which was a tournament rare with had 1,850, which I thought was so like, how dare you? And the card was like so expensive.
They used to always do things like that too, because I've heard stories about Stratos as well. When Stratos came out, it like blew everybody's mind, and you could only get it from the magazine. And so people who had access to the magazine were like storming tournaments, and like all of them were making top 8. It seems like Yu-Gi-Oh was not particularly good at like controlling that situation, because cards were, I think back in the day, and this has never been true in Magic or Pokemon, but cards didn't come into a level of legality or leave a level of legality until they're banned. It's either you have it or you don't have it,
right?
And that's nuts.
That is nuts. Yu-Gi-Oh be crazy like that.
Yu-Gi-Oh is crazy.
But no, I do remember an early tournament where this guy, he was older than the rest of us. He clearly had played other card games and stuff. But he came in and had a card, Robin Goblin. I don't know if you've heard of this card. You know what I'm talking about? It's a ongoing trap card that when you cause damage to your opponent's life, they must discard a card at random. That taught me a lesson, because I thought I was like hot shit before that, because I would do like decently well in like the tournaments. But he came in and just hit me a couple times with that. I had no cards in my hand. It was the first like true feels bad moment in my card game career, but it teaches you a valuable lesson that you can't play the game if you don't have cards in your hand. And so any card that gave you card advantage or took it away from your opponent was like gold, right? And that's true in Pokemon, right? People play Judge and Iono and then Path to the Peak to make it stick, just to stick you with a bad hand or with a small hand where you can't play the game.
Well, I love when a card's really busted in both games, like the exact same, like, because Delinquent Duo is a really famously busted card in Yu-Gi-Oh!
Delinquent Duo.
And then they printed it not that long ago as Jesse and James in Pokemon.
Right.
And of course, it was banned immediately because it's a busted effect.
Yep.
But yeah, what do you think you love most about card games?
I think, well, I suppose there's a bit of, if I'm gonna like psychoanalyze myself, is that growing up I was a pretty big loser and I wasn't really good at anything. Like I wasn't good at like sports or like math even, or just like, even nerds are supposed to be good at math, but like my only skill was ever like writing and stuff. But I found myself drawn to these games because it was a way to like prove yourself. Like the football arena was like for the jocks and stuff, but like the card game store, that was my arena. That sounds so cheesy.
No,
but I feel like there's something about that. But also I think I love, it's almost like every time you shuffle up the deck, it's almost like pulling the lever on a slot machine in Vegas, because you never know how the cards are gonna fall.
Right.
And I think I've just convinced myself that like no matter how they fall, that I know how to play them better than you do, right? And so it's that. It's
Denzel
always
Washington slow clap.
Yeah, it's always fun to play the games, and I love like kind of figuring them out. And like a new card game, Disney or Lorcana, came out, and already my brain is like, this is so fun coming in at a new card game at the ground
I will
floor.
say that's incredibly, like, it's like there's something fetishistic about that to me. The idea of like virgin territory, baby. Like nobody knows what these cards do. Like there's something like the potential of a game like that. Like even like you and I have really enjoyed. We've played Goat. We've played like WotC era Pokemon. There is something really exciting about playing with a really limited pool of resources.
Yeah.
And so
why do you do it? Why do you play these games?
To be honest,
besides to keep you sober.
Yeah, besides to keep you sober. Well, that's the funny thing about it though, is I think I'm a person who like overthinks things. You know, I'm like a chronic overthinker, and then maybe that was part of like why I was attracted to drinking in the first place. And by the way, I've never actually been through like a program. I've never been through like AA. I just one day decided I was like, this is like not contributing to my life. I have to stop doing this.
Oh wow, well, good for you.
Thank you. Not doing it for praise, but just explanation.
But can we give him a round of applause, people? Hey, Griffin, everybody. Yeah, thank you.
So, but the reason I love card games is because I really like anything where your entire awareness has to be focused into that one thing, because you can't overthink anything else in your life. The amount of like what other stresses, whatever else is going on in your life, like when I'm about to go to combat in a game of like Magic in a Magic draft. I can't think. I'm thinking about like what blockers are open, what mana, like what land is open for them to play a combat trick. I'm thinking about like what's in my hand. I'm thinking about like what am I gonna do with main phase 2. I can't think about film festivals. I can't think about like submission deadlines. I can't think about like the sizzle that I'm editing. I can't think about the podcast on Monday with Ryan. Like I can't think about anything. It's just about whatever pieces are on the board and what I think's in my opponent's hand. And that like level of like presentness, it's like actual meditation.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. I've never heard it explained like that, but I 100% just immediately understand what you mean. Because, yeah, it takes 110% brain power to play one of these card games competitively, right?
Especially. And people think that, like, oh, these games are designed for children. Well, yes, they are.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing about it is you're not playing the card game. You're playing the person across from you. And trying to figure out another person is really, really complicated. You know, and trying to anticipate what you think they have or what you don't think they have, like the little mind games, like swinging at your opponent with a bunch of mana open, it like knowing that if they block, your thing will die, and they just take it because they know that what you could have in your hand could be a combat trick, but you probably don't even have one. You know what I mean? Just like those little bluffs and things like that are really, really, really powerful, and it's an intense level of presentness, and that's why I like card games, because they force me to be completely present. And you know, there's other things in my life like hiking. I love to hike. You know, there's like athletic activities that can, you know, but nothing does it the way that card games do, I think.
That is 100% true. I love that. Yeah. Cool. I'm going to steal that.
But Lorcana is crazy.
Yeah.
What do you think about Lorcana?
I actually really like Lorcana.
Mm-hmm.
I'm lucky enough to have had the designer came through and did a demo at IGN and just like left us.
That's so crazy.
That is really cool. Yeah.
What was that like?
It was really cool to, again, talk to someone at the ground floor of an exciting new game coming out.
Was there
really
like
cool.
a Genesis like idea that they got to share with you about like where they were coming from, design wise?
I forget the exact particulars of it, but essentially they just wanted to make a fun game with the Disney brand. And it's very clear that they were inspired by Magic, but they sort of stripped away a lot of the more complicated elements. So it's more in line with like Pokemon, I think, in terms of easy to learn, hard to master, because it does seem deceptively simple. You're playing with Disney characters. It's there's no interactivity on the opponent's turn. You think it's going to be like almost too easy, but it's not, right? Once you get your butt kicked a couple times, you're like, oh, there is more to this game. There is some depth, and it's a very interesting game. But I quite like it. I was never the biggest Disney fan. I mean, I think I have some like Disney favorites and some songs I like and stuff, but I'm not like a Disney adult. You know, I actually always preferred like Universal to Disney if I was choosing like a theme park. Just because
that's gonna be the headline: is that Joshua Yehl is not a Disney adult.
Disney just always seems so saccharine, like it's too happy and nice and sweet, and I feel like I like.
It is funny because it's both directions, right? Like the moments of happiness are so intense, and then Bambi's mom dies.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
You know what I mean? And they've never really abandoned that entirely. You know,
I guess
like,
you're right.
Instant Orphan is like their go-to.
Yeah, no, you're right. But yeah, no, I think I just showed you how to play.
Yes,
and you had
just played recently.
Yeah, what'd you think?
I thought Well, first of all, I actually liked that it was. So here's the thing: there's so many games that come out that end up being all very similar, like Japanese style card games, like Vice and like a bunch of those kinds of games. Like, there's a lot of games that are kind of like them. So I was refreshed that it was more like Magic. And that was a positive for me. And I thought that like the way that some cards can either be played or used as resources, I thought was like a cool way to like do lands without doing lands. Because I do think that like lands are probably the worst card design part of Magic. In the same way that energy is kind of the worst card design part of Pokemon. And so trying to like find a way to have resources and make resource management important, but without like literally printing like useless, like valueless, like textless cards.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
I definitely appreciate that part of the game because yeah, it feels like they paid attention to like all these other games that everybody plays
Right.
and solved a lot of the pain points,
Right.
or they smoothed them over.
But they have simplified to a pretty dramatic effect where there are fewer zones where cards can go, and there are fewer phases where, you know what I mean? Like you can like the equivalent of attacking and things like that, you can do it anytime, and most effects you can kind of do anytime.
In this game, we call it challenging. In Disney, there's no attacking and fighting and killing. You banish characters, which is really confusing for us Yu-Gi-Oh players because that means something else in Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah. No, it's really confusing, and there's not even a zone for what that's called.
No, not yet.
Yeah,
there will be the
Cards
lost zone, the banished zone.
Cards can't leave play or exiled as they are in Magic.
Mm-hmm.
Almost every game has like an out of play feature, but this one does not yet.
Not to. I can't believe I'm saying this
Mm-hmm.
as though it makes me sound like successful or cool or something. But I actually just went to my first Lorcana tournament.
Oh yeah,
the other day.
Weren't you one of 2 people that showed up?
Well,
that doesn't count.
I didn't really count that one.
Okay, so you went to another one, and
I went to an actual tournament.
Okay, how many people came?
I think it was like 12 or 16 or something.
Hey, that's a good
Not
start.
a lot.
No, that's a good start.
A decent amount.
Yeah.
And then I won. And
You
so
did?
yeah, and then they had a raffle where they gave away a super like rare, or they call it enchanted rares, like a really rare genie card, Genie from Aladdin.
Okay.
And then I somehow won that too. Like I won the random raffle, and then I won, and then I opened the free pack they gave us, and that had an Elsa, which is like the Charizard of Lorcana. I was like, this is the best day of my life.
Busted deck, chat.
I'm off to a good start.
Yeah, that's a really good start. Can you imagine yourself continuing to engage in that kind of Lorcana behavior?
I could
proliferation.
They definitely have me into it, and I'm gonna keep going to tournaments until it's not fun anymore. Then I'll probably stop. Right. Like anything.
Yeah, of course. Every card game eventually reaches the point at which you're sliding your cards through an e-reader on the Game Boy Advance, and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. This is not what I came here for.
Yeah. Once a game or like a format is solved, it becomes not fun. I think that's what we're saying about Pokemon. It can become pretty stale.
Yeah.
But
mostly it's
this game it's in that magical moment where it's not figured out because everyone just started playing.
That is really fun. That's a really exciting thing. But my concern, and this is part of why I would really hesitate if someone were to ask me if they should get into Lorcana, even if you're a Disney fan, I just really worry about like early card games because availability can become scarce at a moment's notice. They print 3 sets, everybody can get the cards. 4th set comes out, no one can get it, no one can find it. Distributor doesn't know what to tell you. Like the market implodes, explodes, goes up, goes down. Like these games, like especially within that 2-year mark, are so elusive, and they're so confusing to figure out whether or not they're going to stay, whether they're going to last. It's really hard for me to like right now. The booster boxes are supposed to go for they have an MSRP. But none of them are going for that. They're going for wildly over that. And we haven't until I feel like it stabilizes or it seems like a reasonable thing. I have a hard time deciding because I had a great time playing with you, and like I would think it was funny to like make a Lorcana deck. But right now, like the Elsa cards are like $50 each. You need play sets, so we're talking about like a over $500 deck at least.
Yeah, 500, 800 for a deck. Yeah, the supply issue right now is a nightmare because, well, I like what the company, it's called Ravensburger, I like what they wanted to do, which was they gave local game stores access to product early, 2 weeks ahead of when it'll go out to retail stores like Target and Walmart and
which
stuff.
I think is a
great
given.
idea. I think
those are the people who are they're your vanguard.
Right.
They're the people who are the possible player interactions are going to happen with.
Right.
Those are the people who are going to be standing there with the people who could potentially be your long-term customer.
Absolutely. Yeah. They wanted to show the stores that they supported the stores. They wanted fans to come into those stores, not go to like the big retail stores, and have the store owners create a relationship with their fans, give incentives to come back so they can come and play, start a community. A lot of people playing Lorcana, it's probably their first time playing a card game. That's what the designer said. Like they expect a lot of first time TCG players.
Right.
And so I appreciate what they were doing with that.
Yeah.
But a lot of stores are they're kind of they're squandering this opportunity by price gouging their customers and marking up product 2-3 times its value.
There have been a lot of local LA card game drama about that.
Yeah.
Like very, very popular card stores. I'm not going to name them because like the hatred, the vitriol has gotten out of control, but like they've had to come out and like apologize for their prices.
Oh, I haven't even seen that. The apology.
On Instagram,
wow.
They're like making posts being like we're sorry.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, they were given this nice thing, and I get it that it's hard to be a hobby shop, right? And you're constantly being outpriced by like Amazon and Target and stuff. And so you do have to make your money where you can get it. But I think they maybe crossed the line.
Some of them definitely have.
I think selling it as a premium, I get that. But selling it at these like insane scalper prices, I think that's where they crossed the line. And they're burning their goodwill with their new players. These people show up, they've never played a card game before, they're really excited.
Yeah.
And then the store is like, cool, you're going to pay double if you buy it here.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's right. And it's really confusing too, because like the people who are already shopping at local game stores for the most part are doing so out of a certain sense of goodwill, wanting to have local game stores. Like, especially when it comes to like a Pokemon product, almost no local game store is going to sell it to you at the same price that Target and Walmart are going to sell it to you at. And so that's why the scalpers hunt out like Targets. And I mean, it's really crazy. It's even so insane that that's even possible, that there's money to be made in buying products at Walmart and Target and reselling them. It's so bewildering to me, so confusing. But that is something that was happening, especially throughout the pandemic. It was like it was people were like camping out on the days that they thought, and there were these networks, and this happens like in the hype beast world all the time, like the sneaker drops. People like know the distributor, so they know when stuff's coming, so they know when to be there. But that was happening in the collectible card game market as well, where people would know what day distributors drop off at their local Targets and Walmarts. They'll like make friends with the distributors so they can it's like, like mafioso like stuff falling off the back of a truck kind of shenanigans. But when people are going to LGSs in particular, they want to have a local business that supports what they do. They want to have a place to play, and so they are accepting maybe overpaying on some of these products because they want to support the version of the business that supports them back. And then when you overcharge like crazy, like Magic has been really dramatic lately because they've removed MSRP from like most of their products. Most of their products no longer have MSRP. They don't even tell you what to charge for it anymore.
I don't know how that works, but
no, it's insane. And that just means that it's like the prices of these items are becoming like wildly speculative.
Wow.
Like the shout out to Tolarian Academy, the community college professor. He's a very popular Magic the Gathering YouTuber, but he made like a really great video recently about the Commander Masters pre-cons, and basically they don't have MSRP. They offer the same thing as like what many other $40 products offer, but they were LGS is almost everywhere in the in the community. They buy it on TCG Player or whatever. It's like charging like $120 for something for a product that, but earlier in the year stores were asking equivalent product for $40.
I hate all this. I really do. I understand that I'm speaking from a place of privilege, but I hate that these card games that we play just like for fun.
Yeah.
In competition are all some people treat like a stock market.
I hate it too.
Just to make money.
Right.
And there's always the guy at locals or whatever who's there to like flip cards and get cash and stuff. And I just want to play for fun. And I do like minimum rarity on my decks. Like I don't care about the value. Again, I know a lot of people can't say the same thing for financial reasons or whatever. But like it's always my goal just to enjoy it and play it for fun. And I'm never one to try and like, make $1 billion off a card or like be like really stingy. And I'm very giving of like new cards, like at the tournament, I was just giving people like extra cards I had to like complete their decks and stuff. Like that's what I want. I wish there were more attitudes like that and not like nickel and diming people.
Well, the sad thing about it is some of this is how predatory, pricing when it comes to, maybe it's an LGS that's predatorily pricing things, or maybe it's the card game is pricing. Maybe the company running the card game is getting a little unethical with how they try to monetize their product. But a lot of it, I think, comes down to, it's the same reason for why crypto has its crashes and its booms. It's the same reason why the housing stock, in LA has like this crazy the price that it does. Is that we have a very tenuous economy for people. It's growing more and more tenuous all the time, and it's being reflected in people's consumer spending. Like an insecure level of attachment to financial security is leading people to like look for get rich quick schemes in everything.
You're right. But if Yu-Gi-Oh taught me anything, it really is about the heart of the cards.
It's about the heart of the cards.
And it's about your friendship. It's about the friends we made along the way.
Yu-Gi-Oh friendship.
No, truly.
Yeah, it should be. It should be. Absolutely should be.
If I've learned anything.
And that's what I mean. You and I wouldn't have met. We wouldn't have become friends if it weren't for these games. I've made like the cement foundation of my friendships here in Los Angeles. I've made engaging in these activities, and like I've deepened my friendship with some people. Like one of my best friends, Alex Stewart, really like him. He's not good in keeping in touch, and neither am I, but he was one of my favorite people I worked with at the advertising agency back in Detroit. And like he and I remember one time I won a big pre-release event for Amonkhet back in
congratulations.
Michigan. And I actually, the guy I beat in finals actually was a former professional player, so I like played my pants off that day. And I took the box that I won, and like I got a bunch of stuff for it, but I took the box that I won, and then I had a party where Alex invited a bunch of people, because he had like a local scene. He like ran basically a locals out of a bar at the WAB in Ferndale, and he invited a bunch of people over. We had a bunch of people over at my parents' house, and I had a massive booster draft with the box that I won at my parents' house. And
that is awesome.
So fun.
That is so awesome that you got to share with like in your victory with your friends just have a good time drafting. Yes.
But it was hilarious because it was like the nerdiest version of Risky Business. My parents are out of town, so I'm gonna like throw a booster draft at their house. But it was awesome, and the camaraderie and like the bonds and the friendship was really good vibes.
I love
just
that.
Like everyone's playing on a different surface in my parents' house, like the dining room, like on the floor, on the coffee table.
I love that. That is the best.
It was the best.
In speaking of drafts and stuff, I actually made a little small new group of friends because we drafted a Lorcana box together. Yeah, some friends introduced me to some other TCG friends of theirs who they knew through like Magic and stuff, and I was like, cool, I've got new friends thanks to playing this card game. So yeah, the friends we made along the way.
And like it's, yeah. I mean, I hope that Lorcana makes it. There's an unlikelihood there, unfortunately. Most card games like come and go in like the 2 to 3 year time span, and Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Pokemon like chug along. They keep going. They like take, they have a new challenger pretty much every year, every 2 years, and they like swap them to the side. Like keep Behemoth chugging.
I've got a drawer full of like defunct card games like Star Wars Destiny or Versus System, you name it. Yeah.
Totally. What do you think it is about like the big three that keeps them going?
I think that they really like sunk their claws in deep. I think for example
times,
at Pokemon, or what Pokemon did was they like launched the brand with like games, a show, and a card game, and toys and merchandise, like just almost like overnight. Well, obviously it didn't happen overnight. It built up over years, but it felt like they just, any way you wanted to consume this like fun new property, they had a way for you to do it. So I think that is a big way. Reiterating on your brand is a way to make it more successful and to spread it around, right? Because whenever for example, when I'm playing this Lorcana game and I come across maybe a character from a movie. You know, Genie. I used to love Aladdin when I was a kid. I'm like, oh, I should, go watch Aladdin again. Like, let me go like queue that up on Disney Plus, right? Or I'm like, oh, I've never heard this song before. I don't really remember this song from like The Princess and the Frog. Let me go watch that. Or like, this is so fun. It makes me want to go to Disney World, right? Like the brand like worms its way in, and because it gets in one part of your life, it makes you want to experience it in other parts of your life. And these brands become so good at doing that.
Yeah. I think that also it's really interesting that two of those are basically designed by the same groups of people too. Wizards of the Coast in the 90s just had the juice. They just like they were on something like completely different. I remember when foils first came out in Pokemon, and like immediately Magic had to respond by introducing foils. And at first, Magic only had reverses. And so like the first couple of sets, I think the first reverses were in like Urza's Saga, or something like that. It was either Legacy or Saga. But I just remember like when the first foils came out, and it was almost like a response to like what had happened because foiling was such a big deal in Pokemon. But it was just, there was something at that time that was really interesting. And Yu-Gi-Oh! Challenged the two of them when I feel like many others were showing up, but they didn't last. My bigger worry though for Yu-Gi-Oh! is the way that the power creep works. And maybe this is a little bit in Magic, but it doesn't seem to be in Pokemon. With Pokemon, the numbers can always get bigger. The HP and the damage can just always get 10 bigger here and there for eternity, right?
Yeah.
Until there are like 3,000 HP Pokemon.
Yeah, that day will come.
Yeah. But in Yu-Gi-Oh!, the power creep is literally fitting more words on the cards. Eventually you're going to have to like QR code the bottom of a card to like read like the full book of text that accompanies it.
Yeah.
So I worry about that for Yu-Gi-Oh! But as of right now, the three of them are still very much unchallenged.
And like I was saying earlier, Magic's getting a TV show. Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah, they got into our generation by having those shows. Well, they weren't card games first, right? But they became later. Magic started as a card game, and they're getting a show later. But the others sort of like launched with like shows and stuff, right? Almost. But yeah, I think.
Did you ever know anybody when we were kids that actually played VGC, like actually played the game competitively?
No, I didn't even know that existed when I was a kid.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Yeah,
I played a little bit with my friends. Like we would like the one day we could find the link cable where it wasn't like like so far in like a couch cushion that you would never see it again. But that was it was interesting because like the card game took off in a social capacity like in a way that was like crazy. Like this was like, it almost feels like it came out as like a kind of like additional idea about how to represent the brand. Obviously it was like a video game kind of first, and then the TV show and the card game come out of it, but the card game was so shockingly popular.
Yeah. Everyone. Yeah. You mentioned Pokemon to anyone, and the first thing they say is, I have my old binder of cards at home. Or they have the sad version of that, which is my mom threw away my old binder of cards.
Yeah. Or they got stolen, which is what happened to me when I was a kid. Kids had like no concept of property or like they were just doing whatever. I actually think that one of the most chaotic memories of my childhood is remembering. So back in the day, Pokemon League stuff would be hosted wherever someone would agree to host it. And so Borders, the bookstore, like RIP Borders, there's one somewhere, but I have no idea. I haven't seen one in forever. But they used to host like the Pokemon League, and Pokemania was so crazy on my side, on the east side of Detroit, in the east side suburbs, that like 400 kids would show up.
Wow.
Like people would just like drop off like cards full of children and then just peel out. You know what I mean? But like no one working at Borders was like being paid extra. You know what I mean? No one was like being prepared for this.
To be a babysitter.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like I was supposed to work in the coffee shop today. Oh, the Pokemon people are going, no.
Yeah, now we have like tournament organizers and stuff.
There's a whole thing for it. But back in the day, they would just mail like the local Borders like 3 bags full of like pins that you could win and be like, good luck.
Oh man,
it was unhinged. It was like terrifying. But Pokemania was really that crazy. And like so many of the people who I know who love Pokemon now are like literally born in the 2000s. Like they never experienced like a moment of 20th century like Pokemania.
Yeah.
And it really was. It's like a hard thing to describe to people just how chaotic and crazy it was.
Well, maybe they kind of did, because remember Pokemon Go? I see that as like the second coming of Pokemania,
yeah, totally.
right? I think that is what reignited like the Pokemon Inferno that's still burning today.
Right.
Because the Pokemon's bigger now than it's ever been, which is weird to say because it was so big, that initial boom. But I think Pokemon Go like reawakened it in the public consciousness and probably got a lot of new fans into it, casual and more hardcore, like us.
I have a hard time imagining though that Pokemon is as ubiquitous to a child's experience now as it was in the late 90s.
Maybe not. I don't know.
Every school in America simultaneously, without the internet and without communicating with one another, all had to ban playing cards and Game Boys all at once.
Wasn't there a similar societal reaction to Pokemon Go though? Like people were going in people's yards and trespassing and finding dead bodies and stuff. Because just like Pokemon Go was as a whole, like a global community, was making us do things we never did before as a.
That's 100% true. Yeah. But don't you feel like the most of the people freaking out about Pokemon Go were millennials?
Probably a lot of it, but I know a bunch of kids were into it.
I feel like that was part of why Pokemon Go was so important, was because millennials had gotten old and fat, and Pokemon was like, go outside.
It got us back into shape.
And we were like, okay,
yeah.
like if there's a Charizard out there, maybe I'll go back outside.
I thought it was all ages who were into
definitely
Pokemon
was,
Go.
But I definitely felt like it was like this weird thing where like millennials were like could like hear like the conch was being blown. You know what I mean? Like back out into the wilderness.
Yeah. But I mean, Pokemon Go led to Detective Pikachu, the first live-action movie, 100%. Getting greenlit. Yeah. Pokemon Worlds is bigger than it's ever been. There's more players than there's ever been at these tournaments.
But to be fair,
they just doubled the prize money.
Right. But there was no organization back then for that stuff.
Sure.
You would still like in the 90s, it was not uncommon to just like walk into a gas station and they'd be selling Pokemon cards.
Right.
Or you go to the dentist and someone would give you a pack of Pokemon cards as like your instead of the lollipop that you were used to. Like it was, the ubiquity was pretty weird.
You're right. It was
an uncanny level of ubiquity. And I remember like I'd be just driving on the street and there would be like a Volkswagen Beetle that was Pikachu. And there was like a Lugia like airplane. You know what I mean? It was like insane. It was unhinged. I remember like Toys R Us when I was a kid couldn't keep in American Pokemon products, so they would just import Japanese Pokemon product just without any label differences, without anything, and just be like, here, because that's like what we can keep in stock.
Oh, wow.
I mean, like, do you have any other of those kind of crazy memories? If you like,
now that you're saying all this, it is starting to, maybe it was,
dust the cobwebs off.
It was everywhere.
It was everywhere.
Yeah. And banned from my school. I remember that. And yeah.
I remember like the jock kids getting literally insecure that they were getting less attention.
Really?
Yeah, I remember that like at least like one like some like the kids who were like on the basketball team or on the baseball team would like start like be like, this is so stupid, why do you guys all like this? And it was maybe because their parents wouldn't let them do it because it was going to be a distraction from baseball or basketball or whatever.
Or it's for nerds.
Yeah, well that's the thing though, it was so ubiquitous that like literally everyone liked it. And it was the first, to me, one of the first moments where I was like, oh, wait a minute, like this kind of thing can be popular for everyone. And now like post pandemic, and I'm like seeing like how many people go to Anime Expo, and like as Marvel movies are just now the only movies, it's like it's interesting.
Well, I have two, I guess this is anecdotal, but I have two like cousins who are, like adolescents, and they're obsessed with Pokemon. Actually, I think one of them's kind of on the way out a little bit and is finding other interests. But yeah, they're just like, when I go visit, we just like talk about Pokemon all the time. But we're a completely different generation, but it's huge for them. And they play the cards with all their friends, play the video games, and play Pokemon Go.
My friend's son, Bob, I love Bob. Bob's the best. But Bob, his only interest in me as a person is that his father has told him that I am a Pokemon master.
Right. Ooh.
And so he has lots of questions for me.
A master. I don't know. Has he seen your Limitless page?
Yeah, exactly.
What Limitless page?
Yeah, what Limitless
Bob.
Page? Oh my God. Yeah. Not to burst Bob's bubble. Or to burst Bob's bubble, but yeah, what's really cute though and funny is he says that and he's like really excited to ask me something, but then when he can't remember what he wanted to ask me, so he's like you can tell he like wanted to ask something and he gets all bashful and he's like, never mind.
Aw, that's adorable.
Cute. Yeah, it's really cute. All right, well, I feel like we could ramble on about card games and stuff like that forever, but I really appreciate you stopping in, and thank you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I learned so much about you. I thought this was supposed to be about me.
I thought
this was supposed to be about me, Ryan. How could you let this happen? Where's my rider? Where's my blue M&Ms?
Did you want to talk about your relationship with alcohol?
No, actually,
Is that a subject you want to
let's get out of here. No, this is great. This is great. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being here.